also
How you
streaming
doing?
right now.
Okay.
How many viewers do we have?
How many what?
Viewers?
Well, we just a second got on, so
100, 100 and...
She's still counting.
What
Never
is
mind.
that? 159.
Good.
There we go. Hi, Jay.
Hello, Jane.
Better.
Have we heard from, oh, he looks like he's...
Yeah, he's here. I think he just went to the restroom. We have for him.
Yeah.
As soon as he comes back.
And then we have, here's...
That's, us. Or us.
And
Listen, Jill.
hi, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Great.
Saw the smoke signals article. Came out nice.
Yeah,
Real nice.
good.
Where
So
is it?
Yeah,
Yeah, he did.
saw it in the mail today.
Where is it?
I just got it in the mail
Okay,
today.
I haven't seen, I haven't
Oh,
seen it.
physically in the mail.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I
okay,
got it
good.
in the mail and then,
2 o'clock.
all right.
Okay.
All right, we will call the meeting to order. This is the February 14th, 2024 meeting of the Environmental Advisory Committee. We'll do a roll call here,
Okay, Jessica Namath,
here.
Brad Freese,
Here.
Russ Redmond, Jill Wenta, Michelle Sharrouse.
Here.
Okay,
Mr. Damon's here as well.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Mr. Damon.
all right. And now we will have the approval of the agenda. And Jeremy, is this the point at which you were advising I add this in? Okay. I would like to add to the agenda a special item, an emergency order, so to speak, item to discuss the public's, the erosion that is happening on Jupiter Island. We have some houses that they're losing or nearly losing in the inlet colony. Certainly lost portions of, but I would like to just discuss how that might affect us in the future and make sure that we're doing everything we can to ensure public safety and environmental, what environmental impacts and safety that may have. So, I don't know how.
I make a motion to approve that
Second it.
amendment
Okay.
to it.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, thank you. So then we'll just have that added. Is that going to be the last agenda item we'll have on?
We can put it,
Or, well, yeah,
yeah, we can put it wherever you want. We can put it under new business.
okay.
Old business.
I have a question for you. I guess it would come under old business. I don't want us to drop our green building conversation.
No, and I was under, this is, my,
So would we just
well,
touch base
and I
in the old
apologize
business?
because I was under the impression that it carried over, like we were carrying over a lot of these, like the items that we had been discussing in the past previously, like there was
Our
like,
old business, yeah.
right.
Just make sure that we don't lose it, so I guess, would it need to always be listed under old business? Is that how that would go about?
For the new item that you all just added to the agenda?
No.
No, the previous
Oh.
items,
Oh, yeah.
so everything that we had kind of
Yes,
previously been
yes,
doing.
it's old business.
Okay.
Okay, so
So you wanna go to communications from citizens, we'll just add.
did we answer your question, Michelle? Did you?
Mhm.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Yes, and we would like to let the record reflect that we have Jill Wenta here at 2:03 p.m. Okay, and yes, communications from citizens. We have none. Presentations. Do we have any presentations? We have none. All right, well, the consent agenda. We have the minutes from the January 10th, 2024 meeting. Is there anything that we need to change with this? Any objections to the consent agenda?
I move to approve the minutes from January 10th.
Just need a motion and a second.
Okay,
Second?
wonderful. Are all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Made the
Aye.
motion, I'm sorry, was it Michelle?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so now we are to the regular agenda. And back to old business here. I think, first we should probably, if we could first add the item that
Do you want beach erosion before this?
I think so.
Okay,
I think
that's
that
fine.
wouldn't,
Dive into it, go for it.
unless, are we first discussing what was previously on the agenda? Because I think that was the question,
We
Where-
can after.
We can do it after, because it's not much.
okay, yes, in other words, did you have something you wanted to? All
I
right.
just want to make sure it wasn't dropped.
So, I would like to discuss the erosion that we have on what we've seen in the Jupiter Inlet Colony, which is about 400 or 500 yards south of at the condos, the Beach Road condos that are up for redevelopment or in the process of redevelopment. And I think that in talking with the residents and seeing how many, this has gotten like 8 million views online, the clip showing the 1 week difference. And I know we've got realtors all up in, you know, there's all sorts of, I lived in the Inlet Colony for 5 years, so I'm friends with a lot of the people that are in there and realtors that have worked in there. And I know that this is an interesting avenue for everybody, or obstacle for everybody. Governments, I've reached out to the Jupiter Inlet Colony to ask and see what they were doing in order to stabilize the house. And they informed me that they had sand, you know, ready. They had no way of getting the sand down there. They had emergency, you know, conversations with, they were trying to get emergency permits with DEP and all of the different, you know, agencies they needed to. And the day that I had spoken to them, they had a commission meeting and then had a meeting with all of these different agencies, I guess, to see what could be done. And I think that my concern, knowing what I know and I have seen and wanting to make sure that we're all aware of, or you guys are, because last January we had a meeting with council where this had come up and we were talking about or encouraging them to add a 5-foot setback to the 300 Beach Road. And Councilmember Lori Brandon was in support of it, but our mayor and Councilmember Diambra and former Councilmember Stone were not in favor of it. And I think that, again, we might want to try to speak out or speak again and let them know that we see some clear erosion that is clearly affecting these homes and there's safety issues that we might just want to reconsider or certainly in the future take special heed of, because, you know, what I've kind of learned here is that up north, a lot of times, or in a lot of other places, when there's redevelopment that's to something that was non-conforming or is non-conforming, there's an onus to make it less non-conforming, if possible, in you know, some way. And that seems reasonable to me. But we hear this grandfathered in business a lot, and that has allowed these buildings to be grandfathered in at the 1977 line, coastal construction control line. And the grandfathered in clause in and of itself is something that when I looked up the history of, I wasn't a fan of, and stems back to, you know, racist, terrible things, you know, being grandfathered in, you know, being allowed to, it had to do with voters' rights. It's a very it's something we should be not saying, or a term I think is
Canceled.
yes. I was appalled when I saw what the history behind it. But I also think there's very few people that if they knew they were buying a 1977 car, anything, they wouldn't be interested, you know? So I think that there needs to be more honesty and upfront, or we need to make sure that future buyers or residents or people that are living over on Beach Road are aware of a few things. Because I was over there, I've been over there and spoken with I've had people email with concerns. People want to know where their beach is, what's happened to the beach. And I don't know if you guys have seen, we've already had one leatherback that's nested so far this season, which isn't supposed to start until March 1st. And that is a critically eroded barrier island labeled by the DEP. You know, so we've got some issues with that. But what it seems, and what we know, is that anything that has a revetment or a seawall or needs that to stabilize is more likely than not going to have a beach. It's not going to, they should not expect to have a beach in front of it. And I think that the answer that a lot of people keep hearing is the sand is coming and the sand is coming, the sand is coming. But after, I've lived here over 35 years and we still don't have, I mean, we've been renourishing for a long time and there's not a significant portion of beach there. And so I think that explaining Newton's laws that we all learned in school, or reminding people that there's an equal force that's going to happen when a wave hits something, or when it kind of gradually slopes up and down something, slowly depositing sand, you know, when it hits and goes back out, it's going to harshly pull sand with it, you know, and that's why the sand isn't staying in front of any of these structures that have revetments or these seawalls for the most part, unless there's just enough space between it and the tide line that it's, you know, you can build up enough, but we don't on our critically eroded barrier sliver of an island. That the ocean is in, you know, 6 people's backyards according to one homeowner. You know, it's scary business over there, but if you look at the DEP-CCCL line for the inlet colony, the news is really not great for them. I mean, it's literally behind every single one of those houses on Ocean Drive.
That's the coastal construction.
Yeah. Now, nobody adheres to this, but that's where the state recommends that you build behind.
When,
And this, you
when
know,
was that
go ahead.
coastal construction? Do they update that?
This is current.
They
You
do,
can go onto
right?
their site. They have the
When was
most
the last-
interactive.
So, just question when the last update was of that.
Let's see. I'm
Do
going
you
to
have that on there?
say
1997.
97, thank you.
there wasn't an 07
Oh,
or a 17. I mean,
97. Thank you.
that's
So-
crazy that they would not have done it. Right. So for example, the Coral Cove public bathrooms.
Yeah.
Those are built at the 1997 coastal construction. That's
That line.
yeah.
So that line could go even further back. if you-
Oh,
You're right,
oh,
if they
well, when you
updated
look
it.
at the entire, I mean, when you look at it, you know, I mean, yeah, it's, it's not an answer anybody wants to hear,
No,
but, at all.
right.
But it's the problem is that when we have residents that are just waiting on sand to come to get their beach back, you know, they may make a different choice of purchasing elsewhere if they have to realize they're not going to have a beach if they have that hard structure to stabilize. Like, they have to have that. So I think that
So are you, we're
is.
thinking of looking at education for
Well, I think that we need to
this,
just, the
to be
council,
able to-
this is one of those things where transparency, these are people's lives and fortunes at risk here. And these are huge buildings.
Like when somebody comes in, submits for a permit to build, like the condos or what are they looking at in terms of knowing what their vulnerability is, according to what guidelines we already have in place, setbacks and such?
They have to
Common
be aware of
sense would be aware,
They have
but
to be
do
aware
we
of
need
it,
to
of the coastal construction line.
do we need to state it? Is that
Well, it's
It
more
is,
the
it
buyers.
is.
I don't know that the
In the
buyers, I'm not less concerned, the developers in the contract, like, of course I would love for them to know, but I don't, you know, it's not adhered to very strongly, you know?
What was the opposition
Well, it should be in the
for council
contracts.
with the 5-foot setback? What was the opposition about?
Do you recall, Jeremy, what the opposition was about? I asked what what they were basing their decision on, and I didn't get an answer, not to my knowledge, but.
I don't recall at this time what the ultimate reason was they voted on. I think it was 4-1.
So maybe we should go back and look at that.
And if you watch that video, you know, Bob Shaw does a much more eloquent job than I do of explaining. He wrote out, you know, and very clearly, you know, re-informed them of the sea level rise that's projected by scientists, the 12 to 14 inches in 30 years, and for that amount, it's expected to encroach 75 to 100 feet.
And this type of event's not, yes, it doesn't happen very often, but this all occurred up at Bathtub Beach decades ago, and a lot of homes lost their property. But it's a risk.
It's a risk
that you take
You
when
do
you
know,
put-
because you're, well,
Right.
you should know,
Right,
because you
that's-
should be
yeah.
informed of.
It's
Right.
really a cool, I mean, it's such an interactive.
So this is the coastal,
Construction.
This is the DEP's.
It's down in Broward County.
I know, I'm like, my gosh, where are we? This looks terrible down here. We could maybe. It's cool. We'll get there, guys. But
Go
anyway,
north
so
fast.
this, you can zoom, as you see, you can zoom in, zoom out, all over, and it'll show you where they advise
Correct.
building.
Correct.
So,
The CCL line for the houses in JIC is at the street.
Right.
The 79 line, the 97 line is, or wait, I'm sorry. Let me get that right.
Well, the current line,
The 97 line is
Is
at
at
the
the
Right.
street.
The old line is further out.
it's like where they're building, you know, a lot. So for me, my concern is that buyers or the developers, the people whose house we're all seeing, that 8 million people have now seen fall into the ocean, have not even moved into that home yet.
Right.
And, you know, the realtor that posted videos beforehand, there's clearly a seawall there or something.
Which it didn't hit the news till about a week after it was on Instagram, and at least 5 days, because I saw it on social media, and I showed it to my husband and said, "Did you see this?" And he's like, "That's got to be fake. It hasn't hit the news." It hasn't hit the
Well,
news.
you know, that
And then
was-
5 days later, it
Well,
hit
that's
the news.
because, I mean, the guy that
It's
does
just
it, I know who
crazy.
Yeah.
he's like just
Yeah.
a drone flyer down
I
on the
know,
beach.
I know. We were
And
talking
he didn't even,
about it.
he just like found
Right.
an old shot turning around and saw
Yes.
that, and then everybody,
Yeah.
you know, there've been a lot of people documenting the water at
Sure.
the 300 site.
what,
So there-
what's that red line
That's the
representing?
coast guard.
That's the 97 line.
The 97
That's
line.
what, that's where the state of Florida advises building behind.
79
Okay.
line, Michelle, was further east towards the ocean.
Oh, okay.
So it's
So-
already set back.
Well, it's where they're built, basically.
So this line is not, this line is.
That's where they
That's
advise.
the most updated that we have.
Yeah.
However, you could imagine where it would be if they did a, 2023 line. Jay, where would you guess? Do you want to, because if that's based on a 20-year data difference, 77 or 79 to 97, I think that
So what are we-
that's the 97.
What are you looking for EAC to do
Well,
to
the thing is
suggest for
that
council?
again, we see where that is, and we did show that previously to the council, and they declined advising a 5-foot setback. My concern is just
You need
again,
500 foot.
no,
5 foot?
5.
That doesn't give.
What is that gonna
Did-
give?
We just were trying for anything, and they wouldn't do 5.
Okay, all right. Well, you gotta have some, yeah, so I'd
There
like
was
to
no
go back
interest
and
in going
see.
5 feet back. 500, don't you talk, did you hear?
I know, I was like, where is that gonna put that property? I'm like
No,
trying
we
to
didn't ask for
visualize
500.
that building is gonna be this
No,
big,
so,
going right up.
and I don't know who gets, how things happen, or Surfside, I didn't follow up the legalities of, what that was, but we had residents, I've heard residents over the past week or 5 days, however long this, that have talked about how sea glass has already lost out portions underneath their swimming pool.
I've seen it.
Yeah, they said there's portions of things, and it's just scary, and for me as somebody that is involved, I feel a responsibility to continue to speak up and say, this is a different stretch of beach than than other portions that are part of a mainland, because this is a critically eroded barrier island. It's much more susceptible and vulnerable, and I think there's
Can't imagine what their insurance must be. How do you write insurance? for
Insurance,
critically
I mean,
vulnerable?
well, and then, you know, now you have neighbors that are wondering who's paying for the sand replenishment if they've had a revetment and somebody has a seawall and what are we, you know, I mean, it's just a kind of a nightmare.
I don't think it's even possible for those houses that are on the beach to get insurance.
Well, my thing is that, you know, the Jupiter Inlet Colony is a small enough community with enough resources and money and folks and, you know, single-family homes to adapt however they need to as quickly as they can, I believe.
I think
So
my
I'm
two
less
major-
concerned about them, obviously, as I am about us, where we do not have that kind of money or resources necessarily, and we have
To come in
hundreds of
to
lives.
do beach renourishment, yeah,
Well, you know, this is, well,
and it doesn't last. My concerns would be the turtles and the debris that's going into the beaches and oceans, because I don't
well,
think
there's a
we're gonna
lot
stop
that's being
that.
lost.
Yeah.
And the water that was breaching the 300 site was washing so much sand across the road, they've had to plant grass there now to stabilize it temporarily. But, you know, all of that deterioration of the dune and of the barrier island raises the flood risk for everybody that's on the, you know, the land here. That's our main source of, that's our,
Breakwater.
yeah, it's our front line, that's our front line. And so when we don't have that protection, you know, things get a lot worse for us here. And so,
So again,
I
let's
think
figure
that-
out what you specifically, where does this come to
Well, it's a big
EAC to
issue.
get to council?
yeah, it's a big issue, so I guess there's
But-
multiple components, and that's what we're.
We need to identify them
Well-
before we present them.
So can I will.
Please.
This is the red line is the 1979 line, the blue line is the hardening structure of the seawall. So the 79, that's where all these buildings, you'll see that they're there. I think the other part that needs to be brought out is the 300 building was amended. They had to move their site back 55 feet from that line, from the property side. So the 300 building, which is a little bit further south, you almost can't see in this picture, moved back 55 feet. So it wasn't like they built all the way up to the line. They had to move back 55 feet to the west. The 250 building also was far back. So, you know, they're both
But that's
far
the
back.
old footprint, right? So do we have the new, their new,
No, but it'll be 55 feet back. I don't have the new one. I can send everybody the approval that was done in June of '23. It'll show on their site plan the 55 feet back from that line.
I'm curious though, because again, so the 90s, or the 79, is that what you're showing?
That's the 79.
Okay, okay.
They're all vested to the 79.
Right, so where's the 97 though? Can we just see a visual, can we show a comparison,
Well, that's
please?
what the other one was that you were seeing. I don't have a comparison on the top, overlay on the two.
Approximately, Oh.
Yeah, there's
Hold
the
on,
two.
I'm getting it back this way.
gotcha.
So the 79 line is this line, and this is the 97 line.
Wow.
Yeah.
The way that I understand they do these is they base them off the 100-year floodplain. Obviously, the 79, when they all built to that, it was different, sea level rise, however you want to characterize it. The 97 line, that's why it's all backed up. However, the law, says that, they have vested rights to the 79 line. So we can't make them build to the 79 line. However, when they submitted to the state with the floodplain, they had to move the building forward 55 feet from this.
Well, that's because we can enforce stricter than is required. We just can't make we can't make it more lenient. We could, of course, enforce them to move back.
Well, they moved back 55
But we
feet.
didn't force them to. They were forced, I'm saying that our council declined to encourage even the 5-foot setback. And so my concern, it doesn't seem to be, legality
I wanna
doesn't
know
seem
why.
to be an issue to anybody. Nobody seems concerned of who's, financially responsible if something, God forbid, does happen. I, of course,
Man, they've been signing
am
waivers.
concerned. I know that should all be beach in front of there, and that should all be turtle nest, and there should be, everything should be built behind there. So there's where our beach is, You know, and that's a concern, that's frustrating to me, because there's enough room for dune restoration and beach and nesting.
So I think one of the points to identify to bring awareness is the cost, and is the village of Tequesta in a space to be able to respond to something as tragic as what's gone on in Jupiter Inlet?
Yeah,
Because the costs for a condo failing.
I think they need to have some
So-
pretty thick paperwork of liability, release of liability.
Because the problem is, when you see how many times we've spoken and presented this information, and it's been just denied based on nothing, in my opinion, but I would love to see the data or whatever,
Yeah, I need to
other
see
than
that.
it's just been okay up until now. You know, because I don't believe that's good enough. And if it is to everybody, then I just would like to also make sure that the buyers are aware of where those control line, where they should be built behind. And I also would like for them to understand that if there is a seawall or a revetment in front of their structure, they should not expect to have beach. You know, and that's unfortunate, but I mean, that again is just like a Newton's law of an equal and opposite reaction. And those waves aren't always gentle, they crash. That's what they do. So
those are two good points
so
to
we're
communicate.
exacerbating the erosion with the seawalls and the revetments.
So to a builder, you just will want to make sure that it's communicated where the CCL line is and what the seawall, having a seawall could do. And then also asking the village, how do we know
I
what
believe
type of
builders
costs
know where
would
that
be
line is, I
involved
would
with?
think. It's just they're building where they're allowed to build. So the
Correct.
problem, right, so the problem is that it is on, I feel the onus is on us. I feel a responsibility to protect, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of a squeaky wheel gets the grease type thing. Now that this has occurred, I mean, if you kind of want to say it, it's almost a small, not a blessing in disguise, but it's a
Yeah.
wake up of, hey, we can't just say no to this kind of stuff. We can't be voting a 4-1 that this is real. This stuff happens. But I think it is a very challenging. It's a very slippery slope with
It's
the.
very challenging.
It's a buyer's due diligence to understand what they are
Yes.
purchasing. It is not a seller's obligation to get,
No, and so when
that's
I've
the
asked
way,
realtors,
you know,
would you feel, like, for example, that house that's collapsing, I've asked for our friend Bob Shaw, for example, I don't think he would mind me using him, but I said, would you feel a responsibility if you had sold that house to have told them, you know, or shown, or would you feel guilty, or would you feel badly if you had sold them?
There's a
And
coastal
he-
construction line form when you're selling to buyers.
yeah. So
Has to be.
I mean,
And
the
disclosures.
point I was
so-
making is there's a risk everywhere. So it's hard to say, like, you know, it is a buyer. If you're purchasing in California and you have to be aware that there are fires. Your house might burn down at some
Of course,
point.
but if you're in a
purchasing
high-risk
here-
zone, or if you're on a critically
Sure.
eroded barrier island,
Sure.
or if you're at certain things, when you're coming from out of state and you have no idea what any of these things
Yep.
are, and you're just flying down, of course, yes, it is on you. You should have known, you should have known. However, again,
If we could add a piece of education to the purchaser.
yeah, I mean, something, I don't know,
simple,
I don't know
'Cause
how
No,
that
but
would.
I try and keep things in what's actionable. Like, we're not gonna all of a sudden change FAR bar contracts that we're going to add in a special document.
Just
No,
education.
I think though that we should, like, again, I don't think that we should be necessarily adhering to just what we're allowed to. I think we should recognize that there's potentially major dangers. That wasn't even a storm.
Well, not
that backed
potentially.
up. I mean, yeah,
It
no,
is.
and that was a cold front. It wasn't even a hurricane or anything, you know,
So I do have a question.
Yeah.
So when property changes hands,
yep,
they still
yeah,
can abide by the 79 line.
yes.
Correct.
And
What
that's
is
crazy.
what is
That's
the
crazy.
97 line used for?
New development.
Right.
Not redevelopment, yeah.
Gotcha.
So this is considered redevelopment.
Okay.
Which in Florida, what's
everything.
new development on the coast
Right.
of Florida?
Very little.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Right, so, exactly. I mean, those buildings exist, they're,
And so again, we have an opportunity, we can enforce stricter than what is required, but we cannot make things more lenient.
Stricter than the 97 line?
No, we can, like,
For renovations?
for example,
Or-
they're allowed the 79, from my understanding, we are allowed to enforce setbacks.
Yeah.
Are we not?
Right.
Jay? Right? Yeah, so we can, we just choose not to.
Well, I guess the question would be to what degree, because.
5
if you-
feet, we choose not to add 5 feet
Right,
setback.
so and 5 feet probably in
Isn't
the
gonna
case
do-
of this
But-
this
That's
house
spitting in
isn't
the
gonna do
wind.
anything.
No.
that's
If
probably
we were
true.
to say, okay, you have to,
I mean, if you're gonna ask.
you have to go back, I don't know, 150 feet,
Well.
200 feet, closer to the 97 line, that would squash
Watch the
development,
meeting.
period.
Watch the
I mean, there'd be no
Please.
room, from what I can see, very little room.
Very little.
Right.
So, I mean,
I-
it's
I
like.
couldn't even build there.
You can't,
It's a risk that they,
I mean, I think as a personal property owner, you do take risk. I would worry more about what the effects are to the coast, the beach, the
Well, you're
dunes.
losing,
I know.
you lose
So-
your whole shore.
That should be our focus. I
Of
mean, I feel
course.
bad for these people, but, I mean, whether you knew the risk or not, you should have known everything about a parcel of land that you're buying for
So,
multi-millions of
well,
dollars.
but do you think that as a council or a village, we should be imposing more of a setback than the 1979?
you have no property left for their property.
I mean, again, so if it's 10 or 15 feet, I still don't think that would have mattered the other week.
Correct, and it only will
So-
matter if and when somebody tears down and builds new. So
Which is
it's-
what we have at 300.
Correct, so there's a missed opportunity there.
And then
Um,
they'll say we bought and fought and read all the laws prior to. So is that like the word that you hate, grandfathered in to go ahead and build 250 and 300? Can we do it for anything moving forward? You know what I
Of
mean?
course.
Sure, it's
So
a
that's
conversation
something-
for the future.
Yes.
How we set
I don't-
guidelines and rules for that.
Yeah, I mean, would love to ask for them to move that back, but I don't know we'll get very far.
But I agree
No, I
with
don't
that.
think either, but I think that
5,
given
10
what
feet
we
doesn't
see
make a
right now,
difference.
we should at least say,
Sure.
guys, we have an opportunity here to encourage whomever it is for the
Yeah,
250 and
be
300.
proactive, not
To
reactive.
change if they so feel. If they feel that there is a risk of public safety or to their property,
Or
it certainly seems like we've got some erosion issues
And if they aren't, then, as we were
for
discussing.
the future.
It should, well, no, for those 250 and 300, should be stated very clearly. Here are the coastal construction lines
Yeah.
of 79 and 97, here's where the building is, and like you were saying, buyer beware, right?
Do you mean to the buyer? They
Yes.
should see that?
No, the developer should have to
But
make
that's,
sure that.
but that's
that
for
is-
new construction.
But do you
Well, when
think,
it does, when
but
it
do you
does.
think that the buyer should have to know that the new construction, they just bought, the brand new building was built at a 79 coastal construction, like,
I think that they should,
do they know
You
that? Is
could
that a
put that
requirement
on there.
now?
It would seem like it has
you
to
could
be.
show the overlay, I mean, at some point, we could
I
do
don't know.
that.
I'm gonna assume it's probably not.
I don't know if it is, I don't think it is for a village, like in the village approval, whether or not they have to legally, you know,
Disclose.
as a real estate disclosure.
I think they
don't
should
know.
have to, yes, I mean, if you have to disclose.
Yeah, there's no there's no extra document that is part of a sales contract that stipulates, we
You're
are
building at a 79.
But they wouldn't
But
have
it
to, right,
is-
because you don't have to, I mean, do you have to disclose you're in a, if something's in a flood zone?
There's a
Nope.
seller's disclosure.
So you don't have to
Buyer's
disclose-
due diligence.
Yep. I have seen in development orders that places have required things to be put in the sales contract, right? So if we were looking at a new condo, I mean, this is a question for our attorney, but we could potentially say, we're
Yes.
approving this subject to putting the
Yeah.
CCL stuff in the sales documents.
I believe that, I mean, to me,
That's
that would make me feel a lot
Yeah.
better about at least.
It's the liability. You don't want to be
Yes.
liable.
Sure, I know in Del Rey, I did a deal there about a year and a half, maybe a year ago. But either way, there's now new contract language that says, I forget if it's by 2030 or 2032, something like that, but if your seawall isn't at X level, you will be required to repair and increase that seawall. That's now part of a contract if you do a purchase in Del Rey guidelines. So I'm not sure if we couldn't adopt something similar to that, but again, it's super challenging that we're really talking about condos. You know, not necessarily a single family. I mean, is there a section of single family homes on the beach in Tequesta? I don't think so. So it's not quite an apples to apples thing.
No, it's that again, they have they can adapt much more easily to these situations. And again, they have a smaller community, they've got financial, they have a lot of different, this to me, you know, you overnight can't, this is a big, if these condos fail, you know, that's a lot of lives and a lot of people that are displaced and you know, that's a lot to have to deal with.
It's slightly off topic, but on topic. I've known too, I'm a native, grew up here, been at Jupiter Beach Club since I was in my diapers. I do know that even from when I was a kid, there were times where I was like, oh my God, the beach is completely eroded. And sure enough, I go back 2 weeks later and it's all there again.
100%.
Is there a scientific thought or what
Well, but let me ask you a
occurred
question.
here that was so...
Where are you in front of though? What beach are you talking about being at?
Like literally the beach club at the end, probably the strip of first 20 houses, you know?
Of what, Jupiter Island you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
there's
so
times
I lived
right
in
there
the
at,
colony,
yeah,
and
at the
absolutely,
inlet,
and
I
I've
was
said
like,
that.
oh my God, the beach is gone.
So you know how the
And
beach club
10
is
days
set
it's
back so far?
all back.
You know how it's back so
Yeah.
far? And those houses on the end there are back far. So that's why, again, we're seeing this, it's the first 11 houses in the inlet colony, starting at the north end, that have the revetment, and the house that's falling into the ocean is the 12th house.
Okay.
So it didn't have it. They did previously look like they had a seawall that got taken out. And so for me, I'm like, gosh, I don't know how long I'd want that sand to fill in before I'd feel like we'd kind of restabilize, because I would think taking a seawall out would, but I don't know, and I don't know that
Yeah,
that's...
sure. I guess what I was loosely getting at is like,
My
was this an ultra freak thing that happened?
No, but it's, my point is that like, you have a lot more room. When you have room for the ocean to do its thing, it can fluctuate.
Right.
When you create a wall, you create a drop off by the nature of a wave hitting a wall. You see how much
I
more
understand.
beach there is down, well, here.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Well, I hear ya, but I'm just saying, it's like you know, it gets much narrower. You see how the sand is much thicker down here than it is up here?
Sure.
So again, there's a lot of room here for the ocean to play
I have a
versus
question about the
right up there.
beach renourishment. Whose pocket does that come out of? I know it's a state
I don't
and
know
a
how
county.
GIC works, I know that,
And that's
you
why
know,
they
all
have a lot more over there.
the beach
Because
clubs
there's
that
so
sequestered
much
Palm Beach
space.
County, they're
Okay.
the ones
But
that
this little
renourish.
sliver of
The Village
island
of
right
Sequesta
over
doesn't
there.
have any jurisdiction
Resources
over
for
that.
Yeah.
So, okay,
Vulnerable.
so that's a county tax.
And so when you add
Revenue that
things
generates to
exacerbate the
reduce that.
erosion,
They do a lot of work with grants and resiliency grants to get money to renourish that beach, I believe, so.
Do we know how often
Interesting.
it's renourished in Jupiter?
Yeah, they have a
As
whole,
needed.
they have a timeline. That was something that one of our residents had reached out and asked, because they have an informational document that they give to residents showing when it comes and what happens and all of that. But again, you know, we've been seeing renourishment for a very long time here, you know, and there's not really a substantial addition to the beach.
Never will be. That's just the nature of nature. There's never, you
Right.
can dump all the sand you want, nature's got control of that. But what do we want to be
Well,
able to
we need beach for the
convey?
turtles, we need
Yeah.
a dune to protect the mainland, we need all of,
I mean,
so.
it happened, we're doing it, the county is doing beach renourishment, but what are we trying to establish here for Village to address what specifically? Are we addressing that we don't want to, or that we want to provide the education to the builders, developers.
Well, I don't think that
like
the
we were
village, I
talking
don't think
about.
we're being as proactive necessarily as we can be about
So
protecting
That can be a piece
future
that we
residents
recommend.
and re-nourish, or, and doing what's best for, or advising to do what's best
Yeah.
even for the beach
So
and the
that can be a
turtles.
piece that we recommend from the EAC is making sure that a new developer, in our case in the village, we're gonna say developer because that beachfront properties, condos, that they understand 100% what you were just saying about the lines, the CCL lines.
Yeah, and it's the buyers that I'm most.
And the buyers,
That's
true,
the-
right,
because-
the individual condo purchasers. So we have to figure out how that looks, what does that look, how does that fall into our realm of being able to suggest that type of
And
education.
again, there's, if as an environmental advisory, board, I don't think we should be, I think that we should be encouraging setback versus revetment personally. I mean, I don't think it's doing any good for the dune system or the beach and shoreline to have seawalls and revetments.
Yeah, so I like the idea, but setback, I mean, for the setback to be effective, you would have to build on top of a road.
Well, I hear you. I don't know. Again, I know people aren't going to like the answer. So what do we wait until the building falls and collapses and then we
Yeah.
say it's probably not a great idea to build here? Or
Well,
then everybody leaves and then is everybody sued the village? I don't know how this works, but I know that I personally would not be wanting to wait.
Well, I think if the village is following all of the laws that are required, I don't know if there's necessarily a liability on the village's part, it would be for the developer.
Okay.
If you wanted to alert potential buyers for these condos in this condo building, you're not gonna get the support from the developer to do that, I would imagine.
Of course not.
Yeah.
So
And
if-
I'm not somebody that, in this small kind of a community, I would not be wanting to work at the front desk and have somebody come in and say, and I watched the meeting, you knew that this could happen and you approved it, and say, well, it was the law. So for me,
No, I
again, in
get
a
that,
community
yeah.
our size, I'm not really into the, well, it was the law. So, because we do that, that's what the MO is, and to me, that's,
We're
that's.
looking for an opportunity to be transparent and to
Yeah,
provide some
I mean,
education.
I ha-
We
yes.
can't regulate it, but we can provide
Well, we kind of can't, we
education.
could, but
I mean,
we-
with the letting them know when they buy, maybe there's a way to do that that falls
I
within
mean,
our
we know
realm.
they're going to deny it probably, but personally, I think that we should advise, again, I don't think that the environmental advisory committee should be in favor of revetments and seawalls, because we lose our beach because of it. That's the wave action that is caused by having that hardline structure is what pulls all that sand back offshore, buries and covers our reefs and kills them, which is why Surfrider doesn't like renourishment programs, or why any of the environmental groups don't like renourishment programs. And so it's just pulling all of this sand offshore that covers and kills everything. And I mean,
I like that avenue more than trying to
Setback.
alert developers and, I mean,
Well,
we can
that's fine.
do that, we can do
No, I
that
hear you,
in
yeah.
addition. I
I
think,
agree.
from a village standpoint, it would, I don't know how far it would
well, I guess
go,
that I led with
but-
that because we've tried advising about a setback and it was definitely
Yeah.
declined. So it's
So-
like we've tried and we've explained sea level is supposed to rise 12 to 14 inches over the next 30 years, and for that, it's also supposed to encroach 75 to 100 feet for every 12 to 14.
So-
Fortunately, of that vote, that was 4-1. 3 of those people are no longer on town council.
Yeah.
So I mean, sometimes you just gotta
Try again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I like
Why?
the
And
idea
endorsing
of going
I
after
mean,
the
there's current
environmental
council
impacts
that's
of
committed,
losing
so
that
I hear you.
sand.
But
And
that
sure, it got
beach.
shot down once
I
before.
agree
It doesn't
too.
mean it gets shot down again. Now there's undeniable.
So-
Has there, so then, I would focus on
revetment of
on the
okay.
beach
Yeah.
and the ecosystems that are supported by that beach
And a
not
focus-
destroying, offshore or near offshore
So the,
reefs.
So another
reef
way of
systems.
saying that too would be that instead of focusing on the sand renourishment or the sand coming in, it's
Try to
Yes.
fix a problem
as opposed
by
to
just putting Band-Aids on it every
Right.
6 months.
right, exactly.
And what does that look like? I don't know. I mean, I don't know how many
engineer on that one.
regulatory hoops you'd have to jump through to put like a barrier in front of the barrier island. Do you know what I mean? You know, they kind of have it up, where is it? I've dove there a million times. It's up near Hope Sound.
But in the ocean?
Yes, they're giant granite blocks.
Oh,
They
God.
stacked them. They don't breach the surface, but they mitigate some of the wave energy that comes in.
I mean, I hear you. Boaters will not be a fan of that. I would not, you know, I don't know.
Not,
Well,
I
don't-
mean, so this is probably.
If we have a way of avoiding that, I would
Yeah,
rather
okay.
not have to start already.
No,
You know.
I'm just throwing it out there.
No, I
Brainstorm.
hear you. I totally hear you, but I think that.
What
again,
entity installed those, do you
I
think?
have no idea, but I dove there a million times.
So
And
what do you
there's a lot
think
of life
Just
there.
throw something out that you think.
Well, there is
Well,
no, there is
there
no
is
easy
none. There is
answer
none.
here.
It's like that. There
It's-
shouldn't be anything that, like,
Shine a
unfortunately, you know.
spotlight on it.
I
There's
don't
new
know.
town council members, get them in support of it.
Educate
You know, I'm sure, I don't know when is the next town council meeting this
You
week?
know, is it Caban? I don't know. Like, what would be something
Yeah.
safer or different? Is there
I'm sure it'll
eco,
be
some
more-
structure? Like, I don't
Alright,
know
I'm
what
sure
it
it'll
would
be a topic
You know
of
what I mean?
discussion.
Well, this is again the second opportunity we have to review our strategic plan, and we have an opportunity to go before them next month and present kind of the updated recommendations or things that we have of importance to us. And, you know, again, I think that this is a huge item of importance because, you know,
So do we need to come to the 3 or 4 points now so that you can
Yes.
take this? Is that what we want to accomplish here today, is to figure out
I think
what
that's
that
tough
message
to
is?
accomplish today, but I think we need to put forth a list, or come back here with some recommendations. I don't know how much we're gonna.
But you're under a time constraint of March 4th, Jessica?
yes. And so, again, I think that if we focus on the sand renourishment, like, you know, we're not fans of the sand renourishment, the Band-Aid on the problem, you know, or I don't know how folks are feeling about that, but again, if we were able to focus on the loss of beach as reflected, we can back that up. There are countless letters from residents, and countless,
Sure.
numerous that are frustrated by where the beach has gone, and a lot of them may be seasonal and they come down and are shocked to see, you know, so, but there are also full-time residents that have lived here their whole lives, and they say this is the worst they've ever seen it, you know, and so, I just think this is an opportunity to readdress what we're suggesting to developers based on what we see as obvious.
I think sand renourishment's fine. I think it's okay to have a discussion or a recommendation of, like I said, the thing in Delray. I don't see any reason why it'd be super harmful to have Tequesta lay out some type of regulation for if you're gonna purchase one of these condos, there needs to be a, part of that purchase contract perhaps.
Well, again, I'm not sure that we're gonna, I think that if from an environmental standpoint, if that's, we can certainly suggest that, but I think that stressing that what we know about the revetment and the seawalls, exacerbating the loss of beach, and it being this continuous cycle of having to bring in and re-nourish constantly, when the problem is really just that we're too close, essentially. So we are encouraging for redevelopment that they set back, I guess, as opposed to have to use a
I know,
revetment.
but again, the problem there is a 5-foot setback with this type of thing does
Or
does
choose a
nothing.
different, so then we don't say that, so then we would encourage them to not use a revetment or a, seawall, which they're not going to want to do, but it's just more, I think, we have to say or do something as an EAC, and it's that we're losing beach, there's nowhere for turtles to nest. We have buildings that are, glass that reflect heat straight down on the beach, that people are concerned about the heat of the turtle eggs that are, down there. There's a lot of turtle concerns. And I think that it's our responsibility. We've got a critical portion of their nesting beach.
I think it needs to be an ongoing discussion. Whatever this March 4th deadline, there is no deadline. I mean, it's an ongoing conversation.
Well, she wants to bring something on March 4th.
I understand, but
so
it doesn't mean
needs
that
to
we
be-
can't bring it just to the next meeting.
But you
Well,
can,
yeah.
you can put the, a general concept of this is what we're having dialogue about, so
Yeah.
that there's awareness that gets transferred from here to council. It
And I
doesn't
think-
have to be specific
Sure, and
ideas,
I think
just
we
trying
touched
to.
on it. It's an issue.
Yeah.
What are we doing about, immediate Band-Aids? And what are we doing in the long-term vision here?
That's the way
that-
to
Jay, do you have any, what do you think about any of this? Or is this presenting to?
Step into the
I
fire.
mean, obviously, it's not gonna be well received. I don't think it'll be,
So Jeremy and I have been talking about this because it's come to the forefront in the past week. And,
Yeah.
I mean, he and I brainstormed for like an hour today, and at the end of it, we were like,
There's no easy
Circle.
answer.
there's
know-
no
we
easy
don't know the
answer. Nobody's
solution.
gonna like the solution. I
So-
know, of course.
I
so
mean,
at the end of it, my thought was, I mean, let's bring some people in a room together and have bring some coastal engineers,
Yes.
Joe Chasen, who I'm trying to meet with, for the Brilliant District, and put some of these people in a room and kind of brainstorm
Yeah.
what the solution is, because
Think tank.
We had a wonderful
With
group that
resources.
came in, it was years ago. We were meeting over in public safety when they came. Do you remember which group I'm talking about by any chance? No.
What was the topic, go back?
It was about sea level. I mean, it was like they were the ocean, it was everything about sea level, basically, and climate
I do know who
change.
you're talking about, I don't remember their name.
They were, I mean, it was, there's been a lot of great information that's already been presented to us, that I think if there's something that would need to be represented to council, or I don't know what, but I think that again,
I mean, I think you nailed it. It's gotta be a roundtable discussion
Yes.
with some sophisticated people, because
You
the
gotta do
permanent solution
resources.
is simple. No construction east of Beach Road.
Yeah.
But
Well,
it's not
we-
gonna happen.
we
So,
suggested
I
a
mean,
moratorium or a zoning in progress
Soon to be
twice. We
US
gave,
one.
Right,
this is
so-
another opportunity, we could do that again
So we
and
need to
say, for
get-
no new development.
Right, but
That
it's
would put a
just-
6-month hold on any applications for new development. And Molly previously said that our mayor had previously said that when she researched it, she didn't see any negative impacts it had on any other communities that had implemented it. And so it might be another opportunity to, just pause and consider how we want to move forward in terms of redevelopment proposals.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in support of the think tank.
Me too.
Me too.
We need resources
What
to
about
make
a
these
moratorium,
decisions.
or is planning
I
and
mean,
zoning?
300's done, 250's
Yeah.
done, we don't have any other projects that we know of that are coming forward.
But we might, who knows? You know what I mean? It might be a good time for
But you
them.
have to have a date certain for moratorium, so it's usually like a 6-month moratorium,
Mhm.
you can do that, I mean, make that recommendation. to
Yeah, I
council.
think that it would be prudent too, because
Yeah,
then at
why
least
not?
that
Buy
takes
some
the
time.
pressure off. Yeah,
So
it
what
buys
is-
time.
What is it that you're trying to accomplish? You'd have to know what
Right.
you're trying to accomplish.
Well,
And let me give you my take on what, I think, we should do, talking with Jay, having that think tank, and then whatever comes of that, we really need to address this at the state level. And that's, my recommendation to council is like, the state preempts us from doing a lot of stuff. We wanna, there's a seawall there's rock structures, hardening structures, we can't have them remove that.
Right.
Can't be done. And without the state approval to allow us to move those, it can't be done. You start talking about, making all even redevelop, move back to the 97 line. It's gotta be the state that has to change that. I think there's a lot of energy from other municipalities too, if we can kind of work together and get the state to realize that there's a real issue. I know there's an issue. I 100% agree with it. I'm a believer in sea level rise now. Wasn't before, but I am over the last 4.5 years. So I get it. But I think,
And again, I've had to raise my dock 6 inches. I've lived on that. I've seen it rising here. So
But
I'm somebody.
a major problem that we have is that, the state really values property rights more to the point than they do environmental concerns.
Yeah.
And so that's the issues. We have to be able to have those conversations at the state level and kind of flip that script a little bit and get them to understand there's environmental issues. We know there's property right issues, but there are state laws in place that says you cannot take private property rights. And so that's very big. Right now in the state legislature, now I'm lecturing, but there are bills taking more power away from local governments today And so it's very concerning, but that, you know, really, if we wanted to make some divots, we need to get, you know, these coastal communities together and
Well,
address it there.
is there any way to put the liability on the state then, if they want to be the ones to make this their issue and impose this on us? Because as a municipality, if we're aware firsthand of these risks they're forcing us to take, that's an imposed risk. Like, we know better. We would not be doing that to ourselves but for them not forcing us to.
Well, I mean, the
So
state-
should something happen,
The state approves most of these, they have to give a permit to us before we can issue a building permit. So
okay, well, so then again, this is something that allowing something without having explicit, without a buyer being explicitly aware of what they're purchasing. You know, again, I would be very frustrated if I thought I was buying a 2023 something or 2024 something and it was actually built at a 1979 something. That, to me, I would be frustrated because there's obviously been a lot of knowledge since then.
Yeah, we
So
can
if
do
that's
whatever
not
we
aware
want
to me as a buyer, I'm very upset. And then if I know that my own town council and people have talked about this and known about it, and it's been a discussion and they chose not to disclose it, my gosh, I mean,
So if you were buying a piece of land, you would have to get it surveyed, right? So.
well, a condo, I'm only concerned about
But the
Topeka, I'm not
developer
worried
has
about
to
the inlet
get
condo.
Oh, okay.
survey, yes.
So I'm like, if I
Condo?
were buying a condo here and I want to be they've already built sea glass or something, say,
But a
and I-
survey is still included in.
Condo
your
purchase.
account.
But I don't think the CCCL line is on.
nor is it clear,
Probably
nor
not.
is it on a one sheet like you're
True.
saying. It needs to be like
True,
one
it should be
form that
included.
says just the Department of Environmental Protection for the state of Florida does recommend things be built behind this line, and your property is built here. Buyer beware. Just buy at your own risk, and that's it. It's not like I'm not trying to teach or tell or do. I mean, if you just look at it, you can make your own judgment call. But I just do not, from my experience, people are not aware of that.
So we can look into it, see if we can make it part of the development order moving forward.
And the state may not want that, you know, they may not want to have to do that, so they may be more interested in giving us more leniency to adjust things, you know, locally, as opposed to having a form that's gotta be implemented for every coastal community to buyers. I doubt they want that.
We can make it, I mean, we can make it specific to Quest to them.
Right,
I mean,
of
we can just
course.
probably put it in our code. If it's something that we can legally do, we could put it in our code that says, anytime redevelopment happens, seaward of the 1997 CCL line, whoever constructs that has to record it in some sort of records, or they have to disclose it during the sale. So we can talk to Keith, our attorney, about how to do that, but if it's something that can legally be done,
Yeah,
We can
that's,
do it.
I
that's,
mean, I think it'd be in our, I mean, public relations wise, just in terms of fostering trust and transparency, I would certainly not be happy at my community leaders if they didn't provide it and they could have, you know? I think that's, yeah.
Okay.
But I think that would be a good thing to
Mhm.
suggest, yes.
Okay.
I was thinking you were saying it had to go to the state level, Jeremy, is what you were.
we can make it just a part of our development order, request it only.
Okay, but in terms of, so then what do you recommend needs to be done at a state level?
Well, I think our council's already, I mean, we're already having that discussion about how we can address this with our local representation, and so I think our council.
Well, you know, I would like to also make a recommendation that either Lori Brandon or Tom Bradford be the only ones to spearhead this, because.
Make a recommendation to them, that's up for council to decide.
Okay, well, I would like to, if you guys are all right with that, I would personally.
I don't wanna limit it on any
Yeah.
of them that are interested.
Well, for example, I know that you had mentioned Molly was reaching out about sand or something, was that, or reaching out to,
Well, I mean, it's Molly's, first of all, council has to have a discussion, because they can't do it behind closed doors, and nobody can speak for the council itself, but, you know, Molly, you know, has been adamant that we need to do something at the state level for this, and so, I think that this is coming to council at some point to have that discussion.
My problem is that she also sat in front of me and denied a 5-foot setback. So I don't know the the intention behind it. I know Lori Brandon really fought hard to convince her fellow council members 5 feet. It's all, guys. They're just asking for, let's just do 5 feet.
That's in the
So,
past. There's
yeah.
new data, there's new information,
Yeah,
and
let's go
perhaps,
for
Well, I'm just saying that I
Right.
personally would prefer, okay, I mean, all right, that's fine then. We won't make that recommendation.
No. I'm just saying, okay, she didn't vote for it then. She might vote for it now.
Sure.
So.
And we don't know what the parameters of that 5 foot, how it was presented. We don't know
I
anything
do, I
about
was
it.
there. I was there.
But I would
It's
leave
fine.
it.
It's okay.
Yeah,
We
leave
can-
it
you
open
don't have
to
to.
all council
Yeah,
members
just
that
open
have.
to anyone who's gonna take this on.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, the more the
It's
better.
better than, yeah. one meeting.
Okay.
Alrighty.
All right, so I think we've kind of, at least for today, exhausted,
You dialogue that out?
yeah.
Yeah. Which is good. Okay.
Is there anything for your item, Jay? The second?
So the second one is the strategic planning process. That's going, when does that start? March?
March 26th.
March 26th. If there's any other environmental issues you want to bring to the forefront and have the council discuss and Jeremy discuss during strategic planning, that's something that you guys can make a recommendation on March 4th about as well.
I have a question for you in that strategic plan, where do you see the environmental piece of the puzzle fitting into? I'm looking at the mission, vision, and then I'm going into the categories, the general categories, if I can find it again.
Focus areas, you'll see,
There it
update
is.
infrastructure, maintain strengthen the financial stability, maintain level of service intended operational excellence, and distinct character of village, but that doesn't mean that those have to be the focus areas moving forward. They may add another focus area that says environmental issues. I think 2 years ago, we had a focus area like that, and we tried to condense it down, but we will make it fit. You guys just tell us what initiative you guys are looking at. That'll be part of our discussion as we move forward.
Okay.
So you don't have to,
We don't have to fit it
create
into the
category.
current
Yeah, we'll fit
focus
that in.
areas.
Yeah.
Okay. So it can be its own focus,
Possibly.
or maybe it goes into distinctive character and
It really
culture.
depends on what we're talking about.
Okay.
We might be able to make it fit.
And it could be things we've talked about already, right? So
Right.
living shorelines is gonna be coming forward in the next month or two in an ordinance form. It's not too, we could put that in there, right?
Yeah.
Because that wouldn't be adopted until the summer.
I mean, I think at this point, I think it's already working its way through the process. I don't know that it'd be that beneficial to put it in the strategic plan. Usually the strategic plan should be a 1 to 2 year outlook. Ultimately, you want to get to the comprehensive plan, the 2030 comprehensive plan or 2035, that the strategic plan is small bites of the apple to get there. And since we're already kind of doing living shoreline, are there some other things that we can take a bite of the apple to get us to the comprehensive plan at the end of the day? I think living shoreline, obviously I don't know the votes, but I think it's supported at this point. You can put it as a recommendation, but by the time we adopt this strategic plan in April, I think it'll be at a council meeting already. So I don't think I don't know how beneficial it would be.
Okay.
I think you can take that as in March 4th and mention as a recommendation that gets done, because you guys are supportive of that. And I think, that'll pull some weight as far as the strategic plan. It may not be worth putting it in there. If you just kind of drill down into these and you pick a focus area and then you look at, this is priority 1 in this area. 2 overall, but priority 1 in this area, priority 2 in this area, priority 3. If you look at them, every time when you click on one, it actually gives you a status of where we are in the process, so somebody can track. All right, we prepared bid documents, now we're soliciting bid, which is out for right now. Typically, we update these every month, and so you can get an idea. By the time you put the living shoreline on here, it's going to be, say, completed
Done.
or almost. So it's, all it does is give us a green checkbox that we can put on there, but I don't. That's
But
not
should
what's
it be
here.
reflected in there so the community sees that, even though if it is a checked as done? 'Cause that's a big,
Here's a thought though too, so there's an educational component of it too, right? So not just, so the code we're adopting will be kind of forced compliance with it, but then, educational, so you're getting people to do voluntary compliance. Where they
continues.
say, hey, my seawall can last longer if I put some mangroves out in front of it, and it won't cost me that much money, and here's an example of how it's done, like, so maybe,
That's a good point.
maybe we could do it that way.
and then it keeps it live.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because that's a big one, and I think community seeing that in there is a good strength.
I would also like to suggest that you guys all come to the March 4th meeting. I don't know how many meetings. I think you guys should come to the March 4th meeting.
The council
How many
meeting.
council meetings, have you been to a few, Michelle?
I usually watch them online, because
Okay.
I'm usually not in town.
What time do they typically have?
Yeah, well, no,
But
there,
it
I
is
mean,
important.
it's,
It's educational.
yeah, it is. And I
It
can
is.
tell, I think that, you know, I've dealt with a lot of the council members here, and I think that you guys should come and see and be a part of it for yourselves.
Yeah.
So for the strategic plan focus area for the EAC, we need something, we need to figure out what the points are that we would like to consider conveying, and then figure out the language to make it not so specific, obviously, for the focus part, and then figure out which parts of those are the strategies.
Right, so I think you guys will be in the, this area here where we're talking about what are the initiatives, like Development of Remembrance Park, Advanced Codes. Those are the type, that's where you guys should be, and then staff would, if council adopts any recommendations, staff comes up with what the action plan is to get there. So you guys don't need to, do that part of it. You just tell us what you're looking to do. So if it's living shoreline, if we put one for living shoreline, then the action plan would be adopt the code. Next part would be, put together promotional or informational information, and then the third one might be campaign to get the information out. So we'll put together the
Okay.
action plan to get to a successful living shoreline project.
Did they roll over from the previous years?
If they're not done, they will. So
Right.
it's usually a 1 to 2 year look at it, and so come March, we'll transition some of these off that
Like-
are either completed or can't be done.
Do we have, yeah, okay.
So like on P38, create and fund to purchase critical land.
They're
areas
tree
that
planting.
serve
I was
the-
curious how far
right.
down, like,
So
older things were.
what focus point is that under? Because that seems a bit, that's an
So
environmental.
this one, it's red because we're obviously, we haven't been able to fund at this point.
I'm just wondering which category it's under, because that's an environmental interest as well.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
So-
It's gonna be under maintain, enhance the distinct character and culture of the village. So,
That's
getting
in
more
the-
parkland.
We don't meet the requirement for
I know, just want to know what
green
focus point it's
space
under.
that we're required for.
So is it
that's
under
We do
the,
meet the requirement.
Oh, it's
for the
under
comp
culture.
plan. The issue is that some of it is lease land. Still counts as our total green space. But some people, there's a movement to make sure that we own all that land, but the lease land does count toward our comp plan, open green space.
Okay, I apologize. I thought I was under the impression.
okay, so for us, what items, do we need to determine that now? What items we want to suggest for the strategic plan, or do we have a
Right,
time
that's-
frame right now, today?
Well, yeah,
Well,
that's why we teed
Okay.
it up last month, so that way hopefully you guys would come in this month with kind of a couple things,
Okay,
as
you did
examples
say
you guys
that.
have talked about. I
So
know each one
my
of you guys
shoreline
had-
is my big
You
issue.
guys all had one or two that you guys were working on. I know Jessica was working on like recycling. What is the initiative that you want council to consider for the strategic plan moving forward?
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
you
What does
did
that
mention
look like
that.
for recycling? I mean,
And the
We have the
green
business
building.
liaison who, I mean, again, I know that there are a handful of these business owners that would like to have a recycling program. It's just the onus is on the business, the property owner, to provide the space for and the service.
So I was on the phone with Waste Management today. I think it's the Tequesta Brewery Shopping Center, and I always get the names
Yeah.
mixed up, but they do some recycling. The property owners, not really the property owners, the business owners got together and they do some recycling over there. They have a separate agreement with SWA, Solid Waste Authority, to do recycling.
So then maybe providing business owners with, some sort of literature as to how they can do that, for themselves, or show them, aside from, I guess we could reach out, obviously, and let them know that too. But I think that knowing where to go, or, who to ask other than their property manager, who might just say, no, we're not interested, is a thing. I don't know. It might be nice to send something out to them.
So some of the other ones that we talked about last was recycling,
Do you
living
have-
shoreline,
which-
green building, and
Those were mine,
fertilizer.
yeah, shoreline and recycling, yep. And so,
And the
does anybody
fertilizer.
else have?
The fertilizer, what do we call that, the fertilizer?
Well, that was, we were encouraging the legislation to, making sure that we didn't preempt that.
But how do we also, I guess that would be, well, we express it, but education to our village members about how important, what the effects are, which some people know it exists, but a lot of people don't take the moment to understand. So it's education on the fertilizer, how it affects the water, because it all runs off into the stormwater and gets in there, and we all fish, eat, drink, swim in the water.
So, okay,
Education on there, their green building, where we're still having that dialogue, residential, business, commercial dialogue. Shoreline living, recycling, that's 4. Are those our major?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in support of all those. I don't know if anything, I know you were kind of working on some like lead stuff, I don't
Lead,
know.
that's the
A
word.
brick wall
Oh,
still.
yeah, we're still,
Back to that original list, right?
Yeah,
I had perchlorates and grants.
oh, yes.
Yeah, which we kind of, I think
We
when
put
we
that on
discussed
hold.
it, that was,
Well, I mean, an initiative for grants, I can't remember or recall if we have budget for grant writers. We don't have any full-time employees, but for outside consultants.
Yeah, we have money that we have set aside for some grant writing.
I mean, would it be possible to get a full-time employee to be kind of the spearhead
I heard that.
for grant services in general, grant
You can
writing,
make the
grant,
recommendation, but I mean, I think that's gonna,
Budget.
it all depends on budget.
Budgetary, yeah.
We're looking at some.
or that's a job requirement, like that's something that grant writing is, I think I suggested that previously.
Yeah, you?
Yeah,
Okay.
that it be, I'm not sure why it wouldn't be one of the skills that we're looking for in whomever we would be hiring, even if it's not specifically for that, I guess.
I mean, it touches everything, not just environment.
For the whole village to have
Yeah.
access
So,
to.
I don't know if you guys got a chance to look at like the grant reports that I put on with the council every month. I mean, we're pretty successful with grant writing, $300,000 last year. I mean,
It just, it just takes a lot of time, is what it seems like from the staff. It seems like it's not, something people that aren't grant writers want to do. You know what I mean, necessarily, or want to have to.
And so if I remember correctly, your description, like the head of whatever department that the grant would be pertinent for,
Right.
is the one that,
Yeah.
that ultimately kind of writes it or spearheads the effort?
Spearheads the effort, so
Okay.
like utilities, I mean, Marjorie would contract with one of her consultants that may be designing, the water plant out there. And so she would, also try to engage one of the grant writers from Kimley Horn or one of those firms that do grant writing as part of that, because they already got the technical part written in Kimley Horn, and they get a grant writer that helps. Same thing with like roads. If Kimley Horn or engineers doing design, we've had 2 grants written in the past for roads. We haven't been successful, but so typically the director leads that charge and engages a grant writer. Usually it's one of our consultants, because it's like Jessica says, it's extremely time consuming. So unless you're part of, like if we brought in just a grant writer and we have all the technical requirements over here, like this grant writer typically wouldn't be able to write this grant with all the technical requirements. So we typically
Good
use a
point.
consultant that's already like engaged as part of the process.
So then it probably wouldn't be beneficial to have a full-time employee, even if that person is kind of working with all of the different
I
departments.
hate to say it wouldn't be beneficial, because I know like Lake Park, they brought somebody in that wrote grants for them, very specific, like stormwater, so they, you know, and it's paid off, because I think they got like $11 million grant, so.
Oh,
I don't wanna say it's not beneficial, but for the grants that we've been writing, it's pretty tough just to bring somebody in that go, all right, you're gonna write a public works grant, now you're gonna go over here and write a stormwater grant, and you're gonna write a utilities grant, like, but they brought in somebody very specific.
With expert,
that, so.
yeah. No, that makes sense.
it does make sense, yeah.
So maybe an
So we'll look
initiative.
at it, I mean, we've looked at it 2 years ago, the grant writing was on our, you know, actually it's 3 years ago, our strategic plan to make sure that it was part of our processes, that everything time we do something, did we look for a grant?
Yeah.
Other than just go spend capital money on something, have we looked at a grant? So typically when a director comes to me like, oh, I want, you know, heart defibrillators, well, did you see if there was a grant out there? And when they come back, say, oh, we looked at it, there's no grants, or it's, you know, it's not beneficial for us, then, you know, then we go on to the next stage. But you'll see that we've had several applications for grants. Usually I'll list them as we've applied, and then it'll be like we received or rejected, and so we typically list those each month when we're doing them. So we've had a lot of applications, you know, not all of them get it. We have a very high LMI, which is the low moderate income level in Sequesta, and so it makes it very tough for some of these grants to get some of that. But I would say, I think we're doing okay with grants. I mean, I think if there is an item that the EAC would like to see, I think that's the angle. Like if you're talking about, is there a grant for recycling? If you find one, send it to us.
Right.
I'll delegate it to one of our staff members, and then we can run with it. You know, sometimes the challenge is just finding some of those grants.
Yeah, so after this shoreline issue over the past week, I looked through that list that I sent. And there are 5 that I think are applicable, at least. I didn't go into the fine detail of the grant to see if there was eligibility criteria that would disallow the village to submit. But I'll send those 5 to you.
Yeah,
They're right, you know, resiliency, shoreline resiliency, hazard management, and in their description, I think it would fit the bill or
so
be
like tree
applicable.
canopy, and Jessica mentioned that a while ago, you know, we're, forget the date, within the next week or so, we're doing a tree canopy project. We have looked into a grant for that. You know, we're not eligible at this point for it. You know, but we do have a phase 2 of that in the future after we get through our water
When did we
line
start that?
going down to West Drive. We will continue to look for it. If there are tree grants, we'll continue to look for it, because our trees aren't done. This would be just phase 1. So, you know, things like that where the EAC is really focused on, maybe you guys do the same thing. Every time you guys think about something you guys are working on, also see if there's a grant that goes with that. When you're making that recommendation, councils go, hey, we'd like the council to, you know, look at this. There's also a grant that we'd like staff to look at, you know, so, you know, staff or council can direct staff to do that.
Last question.
It will
Sure.
help you too.
With regard to shoreline resiliency, to try to mitigate something that happened, who would be the director that would fall under for grant?
So like a situation out there, like everything right now, like the development orders have been issued, those are legally binding. Everything is turned over to the building department, and so the building is health, safety, and welfare. And so if the building department goes out there and sees the structure is not safe, he would deem it not safe. And, you know, obviously Jay works very close with him, but the county's in charge of, they do the sand renourishment, not the village.
Yeah.
So we would make sure they're alert, but by the time I call them, they laugh and say, yeah, we've already got a couple hundred phone calls. I mean, so.
So maybe, yeah,
As far as, I mean, you know, sea level erosion, all that stuff, that's, you know, it's not the village's jurisdiction. I know that when we get a complaint from a resident, we make sure that we call the county and be like, hey, we just got this concern, make sure you're aware of it. Yeah, we're aware of it, here's what we're doing.
But,
But that's not the village of Tequesta. If you look at those property lines, it's all private property. It's not the village of Tequesta beach. We don't own the beach.
But would it kind of fall under, what was the name of
What
this?
they're not understanding, again, if they
Distinctive
understood why they
character
don't
and
have it,
culture
though.
of the village,
We'll
having,
figure out what category
that
goes
beach.
in. Like, I wouldn't get caught up on the category for that, cause we might mold these in this year, depending
Yeah.
on what the initiatives are, we'll mold the titles of those, so that way it'll fit into something. So we bring in a consultant that helps us with strategic planning, and he'll help mold the focus areas. So I wouldn't get caught too much of that, is what is the initiative that you want council to consider, like what do you wanna recommend?
Well, I'm just discussing right now the shoreline, and I understand your point about, you know, it's not our land, it's the state and the beach and private property. Maybe the grants that we should focus on are the ones that are in Loxahatchee, because we have,
Yeah, so I think that
We
the
have
other part
some-
of that, when you're talking about some of the grants for hardening structures, resiliency, even living shoreline, is we have a resiliency study going right now, the utility's been doing for over a year. We're doing some final surveys, we just added another $50,000 to the grant. Once they get done with that, they're gonna make recommendations to the village on what we can do to help with resiliency, and some of that's gonna be living shoreline, and some of that. And at that point, once we get that, then we can apply for grants based on what that resiliency study is. The other part of it is at some point tying that all into like a regional or county level. That's really the talk at the state level, is trying to make sure all these resiliency plans all tie together, because, you know, water's flowing one way or another. And so I think there might even be some like Palm Beach County grants available. We just really have to get that final, we're looking at probably April or May. That's my hopeful prediction,
Yeah.
and then once we get that, I think some of the grants that you've mentioned a couple times might really be applicable to that. Because, you know, when you're talking about, you know, that hardening and resiliency, you know, over on the beach, that's private property, like we can't apply for a grant for that. The private property can, but we couldn't, so some of the Loxahatchee stuff, hardening some of our structures, you know, I think those are things we can do.
thank you
Cool. Thank you.
I hope that was helpful enough.
very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I learned something.
So let me just recap, just to help. Living shoreline is one that you guys want to keep moving. Recycling, and I think it's commercial recycling, right, Jessica, more?
Sure, yeah.
Because we already do residential. The education of fertilizer, I know we've been doing that, but we can try to tee some other stuff up for that. Green buildings and LEED, I think that might be something we've discussed in the past, but making that recommendation. And I'm guessing you guys will continue to kind of evolve that a little bit more, but I can still offer it up to the council as part of, you know, something to move forward with and try to make it a priority this year, our initiative. Was there anything that I missed besides those so far?
No, that's 4, right?
That's
Recycling,
fine, good.
shoreline, weed, fertilizer.
And this is the 1 to 2 year, the strategic?
Yeah, plans 1 to 2 years, yeah.
Yeah, so,
I mean, it could be longer, but typically these are small bites of apple to get us to the longer comprehensive plan that you guys have really, you know, went through.
Michelle, you're welcome to present them if you would like to, or anybody, you guys are welcome to. I don't have to be the one that presents them. If anybody else wants to.
I could be trying to look for Stan.
Sounds like
Would you like to?
No.
let me see if I'm here. I doubt it, I'm here. I only come in town for this.
You only come in
Well,
town
Michelle,
for
we can
this?
probably also, if you want, zoom you in if you want to be a part of that.
Where are you elsewhere, or where you only, when you're not in town?
We're retired now.
Yeah.
For you.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I'll look at the Zoom in. Yeah, retirement's a good gig, I didn't realize. What a great part of life that is. Save, people, save your money. Invest well. All right, so for old business, I just wanted to make sure that LEED is still on there and that we don't let that go because there's so much more dialogue. I was also thinking, Jay, of having maybe a conversation with the former mayor of Jupiter Island Jupiter Inlet, that actually brought that program to them. And on the mayor, current mayor, just to find out, because Jill had a good question, what were the actual benefits?
Yeah.
You know, because there's quite a bit of time and finance involved with that, so what are the actual benefits, and weigh those and see if that's something for the city lead certification, yes.
Yeah, we'll reach out to them.
Okay,
Might be a good time to just have some cross municipality dialogue too.
They have a new mayor. No.
they do,
It's not
yeah.
Comerford anymore.
No,
Not Chip, Chip was now.
He was
it's,
vice, wasn't he? It
Mr.
was,
Hope was, but he moved to mayor when Comerford left, and now
Right.
he's resigned too because of the Form 6, and so it's, closer for, so.
well, I just found out that beginning this week, probably Thursday, Town of Jupiter Inlet Colony will be starting a project to restore the
Yeah,
dunes
just got
for
that
lots
email.
11 through 16. The JIBC board voted last night to work with the town and allow access to trucks and equipment that will be bringing in 10,000 cubic yards of sand for the project. The work schedule will be 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., approximately 60 trucks per day. We'll be bringing in sand and dumping it on the beach behind the club for dispersing along the dunes.
Wow. 60 trucks in it.
Yeah.
Where that
road
sand
damage.
is
So,
coming from.
nobody knows. I mean, again, I know that they told me they had sand, they just didn't have a way of getting it down. But again, I'm not a fan of the sand renourishment, it
It's a
just
Band-Aid.
seems to be costly, and it is destroying what seems to be the turtle nesting, it's burying nests or making it difficult for reefs and seagrass to get sunlight as they get covered in this kind of crappy sand out there, and I don't know that that's the way to go, unfortunately. And I think that we're wasting a lot of money doing, well, I don't know, I guess not we, the county, is that who is?
You're paying taxes to the county, it's still a we,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Well, yeah, there might be a recommendation, I don't know, again, made to try to look for ulterior options, or to find this is not the solution, is dumping sand, in my opinion. So I don't know if that's part of that shoreline recommendation.
The living shorelines, that's in the Loxahatchee.
Yeah, that's the
right?
Loxahatchee.
Well, I understand, it's just that, and I was even told that the developer that pulled the seawall in front of the lot 12 that we're all seeing was claiming they did it to be environmentally conscious. So again, I don't know if people are thinking that a seawall on the ocean
Yeah.
is the same as a seawall on the, if we're talking all, I guess, no, I'd rather everybody restore naturally. And what that means for safety purposes, figure out on your own, depending on your lot and if that means you have to move back or design something different or higher or X, Y, or Z, then figure it out. But I don't think that that's
be
going to do
interesting.
anything other than create dead zones. It's just
It'd be
creating
interesting
more
to know where the
issues.
county, because that's where this is coming from. It'd be interesting to know what the county's alternatives, if you want to look into see, how they came to that program being the fix,
What do you mean?
the beach renourishment that you're just talking
Well,
about.
I think
It's a
that, how
Band-Aid,
does,
but
is
it's
that, can
county.
anybody apply for a renourishment program, or how, do they have to meet qualifications, or how does that work?
They just track that, because that's part of their responsibility. I don't know that anybody,
So
like,
the county just does that all on their own?
yeah, they're the ones that, it's kind of like if, it's they come out there and they, go out there on a weekly basis and they see that the sand is, they make it part of their work plan.
So in other words, we couldn't say, no, thank you, we're not interested in the sand?
We can. Do we
Not that we
have-
would want to, I'm not saying that, I'm just out of curiosity. Does the county, or does the city,
Village.
or the town, or the village have do they have any say in?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good
Never,
question.
will they have experts that, tell us that they're gonna do sand? They have a department, know, that's not my expertise, I mean, so I would be.
Well, there are other,
If-
like, we
if
know
made a
surf rider.
recommendation, would they listen? I don't know, I mean, I guess we'd have to have like reason or.
Well, there is,
backup
we know,
document.
we know that there is science and data out there to support why the renourishment programs aren't working. It's just, do we agree and support those programs and scientists, or are we choosing to agree and support other scientists and program? You know, I think that nowadays it seems like you could find somebody to verify almost anything for you.
Yep.
You know, but it's like, we know the reefs are dying. We're the ones that live, I live here. I can tell you from my own 2 eyes, and, you know, it's what I've seen change. I go down to that Coral Cove beach. I don't know about you guys, but I walk that almost every day, or, you know, every other day. You know, it's certainly weekly, but it is, you know, up there by those condos, it is, they really don't have a beach. They've added 3 extra steps, and then the whole stairs got washed away. They have tried, they can't reach the beach from where they are, if there was one to reach in the first place. So it's just, there are a lot of complaints. And it's a you know, it's
So
like,
the round table is
do we just
definitely
continue to keep getting
what
complaints
needs
and
to be
keep
done.
shoving
Yeah.
sand down their
with
throat?
experts.
Well, they're not doing the sand, you know, from 400 all the way down to west, they're just doing it north of 400 because it's all private property. From 400, all those condos are private property, so the county is not putting sand from 400 to the 100 building. They're only doing it north of that because it's private property.
So is that what you tell, I mean, that's obviously what you tell the property owners that are calling asking where their beach is? That we're not in charge of that beach?
I tell them to
Privately owned.
call the county. I mean, the county's the one that's ultimately responsible for that. If they wanted to leave me a message, I can call the county and say, hey, you know, so-and-so is asking about their beach.
But I thought you said the county only does to 400, they don't do private.
That's what they told me, so I mean,
Is it,
but I'll have the county tell them because the county's the ultimate jurisdiction of it. It's not my jurisdiction.
Oh, so you don't wanna be the bearer of the bad news, right, or whatever?
It's not, he's in
Right.
charge of it. I
I'm
mean,
in charge of the village of Tequesta.
Yeah.
I mean, that's from
So
my
you can't speak
responsibility.
out of
Yeah.
turn, you know, like you can't give that kind of advice from, if it's not from the village of Tequesta, they have to call the county for the correct advice. You don't wanna be spewing out what could possibly not be.
Right, okay, well,
So
yeah.
to Jill's point, I think we do need to have that round table
Absolutely.
with some experts.
100%.
And I think long-term, we talked about maybe there does need to be some sort of, so we're doing this resiliency study, which is more focused on utilities. But long-term, we probably should do like a coastal resiliency study.
Sorry.
And, you know,
Yeah.
and I think like to Brad's point, there's a lot of funding for these type of studies out there. It's a hot button topic. So potentially from the discussion from our roundtable will lead to whatever the path forward, whatever we need to study to figure out what the long-term solution is. And then we start looking for funding sources to fund that. But it's a complex issue. We're still trying to wrap our heads around it, and it's gonna take some time to study and, you know, find the right path forward.
Correct, it's
Yeah.
not gonna
Yeah,
happen
for sure.
overnight.
No, it's challenging, and it's gonna happen again. Definitely.
So coastal resiliency though is, we've got that top of the list or on there, very near the top, right? Yeah, okay. That's, I think, since we haven't in the past, yeah. Okay, well then, are we good, guys? New business? Any new business with?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I second it.
Okay.
All in favor?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
No other matters? We just skip all that, that's cool. Is that okay? Are we okay? No, I was asking.
Did we go through it?
No, we didn't, we skipped. We were just